If you're into Game Boy, there's a good chance you'll like my new Neo Geo Pocket Color series too. Every Thursday I'm reviewing a new Neo Geo game. Just join the POCubed Patreon or become a channel member here on YouTube. One of the most criminally unknown action platformer franchises is that of Daikuna Gensan, Carpenter Genzo Tamura's series of hammer-wielding adventures. We called him Harry here in the West, probably for alliteration's sake, but nevertheless the fact that a large portion of the world has remained largely deprived of these games is very odd. Gensan appears in a surprising number of Game Boy games as it happens, although except for this one they are exclusively Japanese, and this one was inexplicably cancelled in North America entirely. There was a direct sequel to this game released in 1994 entitled Robot Teikoku no Yabu, as well as a trivia/general knowledge quiz hosted by the characters in Kizuchida Quiz de Gensan Da. He was also in the IREM supergroup fighting game Shuyaku Sentai IREM Fighter, along with R-Type and Ninja Spirit characters. There's also a Game Boy Color game to come later on, so this was far from a one-off. Genzo must use his colossal mallet to defend his hometown of Benranmei from corrupt, ghostly construction companies that want the land for some prime real estate. He also needs to save his girl because A, it's a Game Boy game, and B, vanquishing afterlife capitalism isn't enough for one day. You primarily walk from left to right, climbing ladders and traversing your standard platforms and pits, while clubbing basically everything you see. Not everything dies in one hit, but none of the enemies feel overpowered, and while the volume is high, it's not overwhelmingly so. The baddies have some really nice variation and are excellently drawn, being given real character with the sprite animations. The same can be said for your player, he's straight out of an anime, except there wasn't one based on this until the 2000s, amazingly. You can find a few different pickups. Rice balls sometimes drop when you kill an enemy, which heal you for 1 point, up to a maximum of 5. There are hard hats which shield you for 1 hit, and perhaps most awesomely, this iron mace that basically doubles the size and damage of your weapon, as well as looking totally badass. The hammer has some useful tricks to it. Holding up on the D-pad allows you to deflect things that fall from ceilings, and holding down while attacking slams the hammer into the ground, temporarily stunning all the enemies on the screen. They're not frozen for long enough to dodge them, but can just give you that split-second breathing space that you'll require from time to time. The pace of the game is full on, enemies of all shapes and sizes come at you in force. Hammerin' Harry is a tough game. Tough, but fair. You've got to keep your wits about you. Candles fall from chandeliers, will-o-wisps shoot fireballs at you, cobwebs keep you stuck in place until you can bash your way out. A whole host of things are sent your way to stop you in your mission. Levels fly by at an excellent pace, mostly platform-based, but interspersed with occasional shoot-'em-up stages. Bosses are a lot of fun to fight too. Each one has their own unique gimmick to figure out, from a massive bouncing nail that you need to drive into the wooden walls, to a 3-faced aircraft that encroaches you and gets more aggressive the more you damage it. The final boss, or is it? Epsilon, is a multi-phase robot that'll really test all your skill sets. The cutscenes too are a wonderful addition to the world building. Each level is introduced as a kind of episodic stage show, complete with applauding audience. While the story beats are simple, the storytelling to get from one to the next is truly excellent for Game Boy. The attention to detail is mind-blowing here. It's the littlest things I appreciate. Maybe I'm looking at these games in greater depth than most people, but I guess that's the job. Things like when you pause the game, the music just goes a little quieter. The subtle ripple effect that crosses the screen every now and then during the underwater levels. Nothing is static either. Even the foreground objects that aren't animated look vibrant, and the backgrounds are full of life and liveliness. I won't go into too much detail about why the music is composed so well, but it harkens back to the attention to detail thing. There could be a relatively simple 7-note harmony behind the main melody, but rather than it just being there, the square wave sounds almost rounded off. I don't know a better way to explain it, only to say that it's smoother. It may hint at a delay too, sort of like an echo that subtly follows it. Not a necessary facet to implement by any means, and one that might go unrecognized by most people, especially if they don't play with headphones, but I notice and greatly appreciate things like that. Oh, and there's voice acting too, and it actually sounds great, respective of the hardware at least. The love that the developers, artists, and composers have spread over Hammerin' Harry reminds me of another game we'll see later this year, Trip World. Similarly, that one is a beautiful game that only came out in Europe and Japan. North America being deprived of these titles, thus making them incredibly rare and expensive, is such a strange phenomenon that I am at a loss to explain.